The question of the day: who are you? You are the dream of possibilities. I say believe it, dream it, be it, live it, practice it. No idea, as inspiring as it is possible until you discover how to practice. It's about being who you are, and to have a conversation where we invite each other and whoever may be listening to begin their journey of breath, time, and possibilities by taking ownership for who they are. Tick tock, tickety tackety talk. Here we go. It's time for the Mr. PaulCast.
Hello, everyone, and it is time for yet another weekly PaulCast with my friend, Mr. Paul. Mr. Paul, how are you?
Well, lovely to see you, Douglas. And to answer your question, I am what I believe.
Indeed, picking up from where we left off last week.
Right. You are what you believe. The question of the day: is it true what you believe? I say believe in who you are. You are who you are, worthy you are, worthy to be who you are. Believe, dream. Believe in the dream. You are the dream, Douglas. You are the dream of possibilities. Believe it, dream it, be it, live it, practice it. Never stop dreaming, never stop believing, never stop believing in who you are. So, Douglas, who are you? What are you?
Wow. You have to give me a moment. I'm absorbing that and taking all of that in. It's really nice to hear that. It's nice to take a moment and to actually hear that question and absorb it, because a lot of times we identify ourselves by the things that we do or have accomplished, by what people say about us, things that people might think about us, but never really on a first basis of who are you and what are you? What do you believe in truly?
So, as always, I'm here sitting with you, dancing with you in the dance of possibilities, the bubble of possibilities, the podcast of possibilities. The most valuable thing we have is our imaginations. Your imagination's your limitation. You should have no limits when it comes to your imagination. But there is value in establishing a framework within which you explore, discover, surrender, embrace, give yourself permission to. So I'm here inviting everyone to consider taking time to look at their tickety-tackety relationship with themselves and start with the source of all your experiences, who you are.
Yeah.
And simple, who are you? You are what you believe. What are you? You are breath. As we said last week, if you're not breathing, you are dead. So it's simple. We'll talk just for a second to review in case we have some new ears popping in and hanging with us in this PaulCast. And as a student said one day in my studio, Mr. Paul, people assume they get another breath. And I went, wow, what an insightful comment from someone so innocent. It was raw, but it was insightful. In other words, think about the world. Think about your own way of communicating. We tend to talk about all the things that are happening out around us. We talk about our friends, our relationships, work, what's happening in the news media, what's happening in our community, what's the newest insight regarding the virus, the next unknown fear conversation that goes on that we throw around. But I don't hear a conversation of people taking ownership for who they are within the activities they are talking about.
Yes.
So I'm about inviting people to take time to take ownership for who they are within their conversations they're having with themselves and the world around them, within taking ownership of who they are within the activity of school, within the activity of yoga. In other
Yes.
words, discovery and awakening comes by taking ownership for who you are.
Yes. It starts with
Awakening doesn't come from within the activity.
no.
And so there it is. For me, as I observe and mindfully listen, I hear a world that's screaming and crying to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted for who they are.
Yes.
But of course, you know me well enough. It's simple. If you're waiting for the world to acknowledge you the way you believe you should be,
Yeah.
I move on in saying that the only person standing in your way of celebrating who you are is, yeah, it's that simple. So my conversation is, I can get into all sorts of things. But in the end, where I want to take my viewers and my listeners and us on a journey, because everything I talk about, I am practicing mindfully. So
And
I want to
that's
talk about mindful practice, what that is.
yes.
Because until each person discovers how to take ownership for who they are, step number one in the art of mindful practice is taking ownership for who you are. So I
Yes.
offer everyone this. You are awesome just because you breathe in, not because of what you do or do not do, not because of what you believe or do not believe. Whether you're joyfully sad or sadly
Sadly
joyful,
joyful.
rich or poor, whether you stumble, soar, whether we agree or disagree, you are worthy to be who you are. And I encourage everyone, and last podcast we talked about this, simple exercise. Breathe in, smile. The smile of acknowledgement, the smile that you know that you're worthy to be who you are, even if you stumbled or soared.
Yeah.
So that's I tell you, that's a mindful exercise. How many people listening can say that they mindfully acknowledged each breath they take first with a smile, with I am who I am, worthy to be who I am.
And
So I
that's
offer,
the
there's a
key.
simple exercise.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to understand, everyone wants to answer. But the challenge is this: only through mindful practice, in other words, putting something into action, living it, being it, mindfully doing it,
Yep.
you will then discover answers that you're looking for. But people want to read about it first, they want to understand it before they live it. Discovery, enlightenment comes by being who you are within an experience, within an activity. But discovery comes from establishing a framework of how you will go about practicing.
Yes.
So this is where we're going about mindful practice. So again, we come back to you are what you believe. Of course, I say believe in who you are. And that's what that exercise is about. Breathe in, smile. You're alive. Take the time to acknowledge the privilege of that breath,
Yeah.
the breath of possibilities. As we said, if you don't have that breath, you are
Dead.
dead. It's that
Yes.
simple.
And
It's
and
that
and
simple.
and touching back to the previous podcast, we talked about um, that being so big a part of mindful practice. You cannot have a moment of clarity without that first acknowledgement.
Mm,
That acknowledgement begins with centering yourself in being comfortable and accepting who you are and understanding that yes, you are worthy despite what other people may say, despite circumstances that you are in or circumstances that people have defined you as, or as you would like to say, the noise that everyone has entrapped themselves in. You have to take that moment to realign yourself with who you are
right,
and what you truly believe and what you truly want.
right. And so everything you experience, everything, everything you say, how you react to a thought, how you react to what you see around you, what you believe you hear, is interpreted through beliefs.
Yes.
My question is, if your experiences don't inspire you to dream, to reach for the stars, to find a kinder way to write your story, to create the fun. So results will come, should come, might come. But if they don't come, you're still going to take the time to acknowledge that you are who you are and worthy you are. You are awesome just
Yes.
because you breathe in and
Out.
out. In other words, take the time to create a safe place for yourself where you feed and nurture that possibility, that idea. That's the only thing I believe, is that each of us is worthy to be who we are. But that will not grow unless you take time to mindfully practice that simple thought. And for me, tie that thought to each breath,
Yes.
the breath of life,
Yes.
the breath of possibilities. So with that being said, how many of us have taken the time to mindfully choose what we believe? So I can do a couple quick stories, and then I want to talk today about stop making assumptions, start asking questions.
All
And
right.
that's what we're sort of talking about right now.
Yeah.
If you have not made a mindful choice about what you believe, you're making an assumption.
Yes.
Assumptions are being made. And thus you will become the victim of your experiences. And I'm inviting people to consider the idea, the possibility of becoming the champion of the story. The only hero in your life should be
You.
right. But I'm not going to get into it, but I don't understand why movie stars, hockey stars, athletes, suddenly they're heroes that
I
we
mean,
look up to.
Marvel might have something to say to us after this podcast, after they watch
Right?
it, but
Well, here we go, right?
you're right. You're right.
So here we go. I'll just quickly share a story to try to give some context. So
Yeah.
beliefs, for most of us, unless you've taken the time to mindfully make a choice, are beliefs that have been passed on through institutions of religion, of education, of government, our families, our cultural backgrounds. Whether you were raised in Toronto or in the rural area of Stratford, beliefs are different. And
Yes.
they're passed on mindlessly. And so all I'm trying to say is if you're not inspired to find a kind way, then ask one question. What do you believe that results in you not being inspired? What do you believe that results in saying, I'm not good enough?
Yes.
What do you believe that results that I feel I need to justify, explain,
That's
defend
true.
who I am?
Yeah, it's true.
I'm telling you
That's
all
starting at the
that.
seed of the problem.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And so we're so outside ourselves in the external noise of the world. And that's not where things are going to be resolved.
Nope.
Change is not going to happen there.
No.
Change happens by each of us taking time to take ownership for who we are within the noise in the world, or the noise within ourselves. They're going to lock me away when I say this, but we all have conversations that are going up here.
And yeah, and far often those conversations tend to be the more unhealthy ones.
Oh,
The ones that are always, up here, that are internalized, that are never spoken out, that are not public. Those tend to be the ones that are often the most damaging.
yeah. The worst critic is,
Yourself.
yeah, though we're screaming, right, for everyone else to see us, to accept us, right?
And
I'll,
that's, I think, part of the reason. I
yeah,
think because you have that internal dialogue that's going on, because you haven't acknowledged yourself. Now all of a sudden you're looking at the world to do it, and when the world doesn't do it, you're frustrated, you're upset.
yeah, yeah. So the hardest thing is to give yourself permission to surrender, to let go of unhealthy conversations that do not inspire you, lift you up. And so with that being said, trying to focus on something that people maybe can grab onto and maybe explore on their own.
Bring us in, focus our
Right. And
attention.
so what I want to talk about is just to show everyone that what is grace? Grace is when you stop defending, explaining, justifying. Grace is when you stop asking why. When you stop trying to understand and you just accept yourself and everyone around for who they are. And who are they? They are what they believe. And what do I believe? That everyone is worthy to be. So, with that being said, stop making assumptions, start asking questions. So, as I'm speaking here, Douglas, I assume that you are listening.
Yes.
And because I assume you are listening, I believe that you are hearing me.
Yes.
Because I assume that you hear me, I then make the assumption that you understand. And then because I make the assumption that you understand,
Stand.
that
I
you
think I
will
see where you're
then
going with this. I'm starting to
that
smell
they
what you're
will
cooking.
then whatever I've been talking about, you will then put into action. You will mindfully choose to practice
Yes.
breath by breath, moment by moment, day by day, month by month, year by year. And then you'll begin to discover, not in one breath, not in 1 week, but in months and years, layers and layers of awakening and enlightenment, grace, passion, compassion is awaiting each of us. It's living inside, waiting to be invited, to be embraced. So, what I'm getting, stop making assumptions, start asking questions. So, as soon as I start speaking to a child or to a friend, I'm making a huge assumption that they are.
Listening.
And you know what's going to happen, right? If we go through this chain, parent, child,
Yes.
student, teacher,
Yes.
everyone's talking past each other and no one is listening because they're making the assumption, because I am the parent or I am the teacher, or I'm the child that wants something, or I'm the student that needs something, that people are listening. So here's my gift today, or my suggestion or possibility in finding a kinder way. Do not make the assumption that you are welcome to speak just because of who you are and because of whatever is going on in your body or your mind. So I say, Douglas, can I share something with you?
Why, yes, you can, Mr. Paul.
And as soon as you say that, yes, I can, I know that your ears and mind are now open to the possibility of listening, that there's a chance you might hear me. So in finding a kinder way, ask permission.
So, two parts. One, in giving yourself permission to be who you are, and as well asking permission from the person that you wish to share to, the person you are having your journey with, you could say.
So don't make the assumption just because you wake up, you're going to be in a great mood.
Excellent point.
And then you're disappointed when you feel, oh my gosh, my back's out. Oh, I got a crappy text waiting for me. Okay? So stop. There's layers, but guess what? Assumptions are a byproduct of
You not asking.
okay.
Yeah.
Assumptions are a byproduct of what you believe.
Believe, yeah.
So what made you believe just because you wake up you should feel great? What makes you believe that a child should listen just because you're a teacher? So assumptions are a byproduct of beliefs. So finding a kinder way, because in the end, I'm about finding a kinder way, which will require us to mindfully practice. Stop making assumptions. Start asking questions. Whatever you experience, whatever you believe you hear or have heard, before you pounce, before you react, before you do whatever, always ask one more question. And it's simple as this. Whatever you believe you heard, I'm interested in, for example, someone throws a baseball. The kids are outside playing and they throw a baseball through the window. Now, usually watching the world, people get upset. How could you throw the baseball through the window? What, blah, blah, blah. And there's noise.
Yes.
Step back, ask one question. What inspired you to throw the baseball through the window? And what do you think the response might be from a 10-year-old?
Well, they definitely wouldn't say that they were inspired to do it, but they might be more open to explaining, well, it was an accident. I wanted to play. The play got a little bit out of control. Timmy didn't catch the ball the way that he should have, and here we are.
So it was not a mindful choice to throw that baseball through the window.
Indeed.
but everyone wants to talk about that moment, the noise. But
Yes.
where the true insight will come is asking the question, because I put my money on, and maybe they say we were trying to throw the ball through the window. Well, that's a different conversation. But I put my money on most of the time when we ask that question, you'll be what I call the rest of the story. People, we're going to get there in a second. So with that being said, I'm going to share this story from a workshop.
All right.
Parents, teachers, and students all together. And the question was, what does practice mean to you? So I separated the parents, separated the teachers over there, and the students. And so they did their list. And on the student list, one of the kids said practice to them meant bargaining. And I could see the parents in the front row smiling because he came up and stood beside me because I wanted to ask one more question. So, of course, following my framework, some of my policies, Paulicy. I have policies in my studio, in my life.
In a couple podcasts. We'll get to that. Yeah.
So, coming back. So, stop making assumptions, start asking questions. And here I am, the parents' pink is front. And at that time, I was talking about the value of agreements, right? We won't get into it, but so when he said bargaining, my mind, what I believed was that he's on the same track where I'd like to go. But Mr. Paul's, I know I look quite young.
Yes.
Right. But as I tell my students, I'm almost 100. And to put that in context, that's why I'm still working, because I got plastic surgery bills to pay.
Wait, you told me that you were from the Cretaceous period. Prehistoric, Mr. Paul.
I prefer to say I'm timeless, but I keep evolving. That's the wonderful thing, you see. Life is changing all the time, whether we like it or not. And so
stay still, even in the middle of a pandemic.
So we should easily be able to embrace new ideas and possibilities. Right. So with that being said, I come back to the kid about stop making assumptions, start asking questions. And so I was sort of excited because the assumption that was running through my mind, because the word bargain to me, I believed in my experience, was similar to making an agreement.
Yes.
So I said, could you tell me what you mean by bargaining? 10-year-old boy. He looks at me without missing a beat and goes, my parents getting their way.
I mean, it isn't going to be, it isn't going to get more truthful than that. Oh my goodness. What were the looks on their faces when they heard this?
Well, you probably couldn't guess. But with that being said, my point is this. If I had just moved forward, I would have made the assumption that the kid gets it. He understands what an agreement is. It's about being acknowledged. Everyone's being acknowledged. Everyone's being heard. Everyone comes to an agreement of when to practice and how we can practice. But for that young boy, a bargaining wasn't that at all. It was about his parents getting their way. So with that, stop making assumptions. Start asking questions. And I swear you ask at least one more question. And it's always this, asking what inspired you to do what you did? What happened? For example, someone comes to a lesson and they seem really upset, the student. And so instead of getting entangled in the noise of, you're upset, what's going on? And most people don't want to talk about that. I'll go, what happened at school today that resulted in you seeming a little bit upset? You with me? So whatever we see, experience in the moment is not worthy of our time. Because when you put your finger in there, you're going to become the noise.
Yes, that's true.
And I tell you, in that moment, no one's listening, no one wants to hear, et cetera, et cetera. There's nothing mindful in the experience. What is of interest is, what was the source? What happened? What do you believe? What do you believe happened that resulted in this experience? So where the answers lie are in the question before. But everyone tends to get trapped in the noise of the moment. So there's my first, and finding a kinder way. First of all, stop making assumptions, start asking questions, and give yourself permission to ask for permission to speak, to ask. And it was very sweet. A little kid said to me, well, what if my mom says no? like ask permission, right? And fascinating, right? Because I should have asked her the question, well, what inspires you to say that? No, seriously, right?
It's true, but sometimes in the moment, right? Because the children have a tendency to, again, and this is just to do with circumstances. But as you say, in finding a kinder way, if you ask that one more question, once a child knows that they are safe, that you have, here we go, that you have created a framework for them to be safe and to be who they are. They'll let you know, for example, with your young student, when you say, what does bargaining mean to you? And he's like, oh, you don't know? Well, let me tell you, you know?
So it's simple, you see. That's why already the tool I've offered everyone, breathe in, smile. If you do that with every breath, you will respond to noise and take the time to ask one more question. But if you don't take the time to acknowledge the breadth of possibilities, chances are you will react and not ask a question and just try to get into the noise for whatever that is, whatever that experience is. So with that being said, I then just showing, stop making assumptions. We talked about, I assume you're listening. Because we assume you're listening, I assume you hear me. Because I make the assumption that you hear me, I assume you understand. And because I make that assumption, I'm then in shock.
When you
right?
mindfully practice.
That you are not breathing in, smiling, and taking ownership for who you
are. Yeah.
Cool?
Yeah.
So now I'll step it up a little bit.
Oh, all right. Leveling up.
Here he is. I mentioned him.
Here comes Oscar the Grouch's cousin.
No. I mentioned him last week, right? The practice monster.
Yes, indeed. The practice monster.
So this is the practice monster, and he's a reminder about what kind of practice?
Mindful.
Right. But here it is. Stop making assumptions. Start asking questions. So can you tell me what you believe you see, Douglas?
I mean, I see a very, how do I put it? You could say he's a little bit menacing. He's, looking at me with baleful eyes, as if I've done something to wrong him.
Okay. So you make the assumption based upon what you
see.
So you look, I assume that you're looking, you see, at this and not at this. Who's the practice monster, him or him? So I make the assumption that we're both looking at the same thing. Then I make the assumption that because we're both looking at it, that we will see the same. And then because I make the assumption that we both see the same, I make the assumption that we will understand how to move forward. And then because I make that assumption, I am surprised or shocked. Are you ready? So people have said, he looks mean, he looks angry, he looks crazy. You shared some ideas. Guess what? He was born this way. You with me? And everything that we used, every word that we used is a byproduct of what we believe. We believe because we see teeth like this or eyes or whatever, that he's mean, he's angry, he's crazy because his eyes are a certain way. I come back and say, he was born this way. And I can tell you, he's the most loving guy in my studio. He accepts my students and passionately invites them to take time to mindfully celebrate who they are in the activity of practice during the week.
Wow.
Stop making assumptions. Start asking questions. Every word that we use, each of us has our own belief to what that word means. And you see it all the time, people talking past themselves all the time on social media.
It's true.
With
that knowledge now and knowing that, don't quite put him away quite yet. Permission to ask one question.
All right. Oh, Douglas. Two things. Did you love that, everyone? He asked permission, right, to ask a question. So, my God, Douglas, I don't need to make an assumption now. I believe he's been mindfully listening, and now he's heard something, and now he's done something really cool. He's actually mindfully choosing to apply the framework that I'm talking about.
Yes.
So,
Yes,
Douglas,
indeed.
yes, you may ask one question.
May I ask for the practice monster's understanding in that I didn't recognize initially when I first saw him all of the things that he was. I looked at the noise, I looked at his features, I looked at the visual, and I instead should have been paying attention and should have been asking more of a question about, well, Mr. Practice Monster, who are you really? And what do you stand for? And so, with that, I ask humbly if the Practice Monster could forgive my ignorance.
Well, Douglas, you never have to ask forgiveness because the practice monster accepts you as you are. Whether you stumble or soar, whether we agree or disagree, he will let you know that you are awesome and say, come on, get back on board this week and make a mindful choice to make that mindful phone call to share with Mr. Paul that you're going to start your mindful practice. And then remember to call afterwards that mindful phone call to tell Mr. Paul that you finished your mindful practice. Okay?
Yeah.
So this is no different than taking the time to take that mindful breath, acknowledging the smile of acknowledgement. It's that simple, gang. Breathe in,
Breathe out.
smile.
Yeah.
I promise you, in time, within time, through time, if you have the courage, the discipline, the curiosity to go on that adventure of doing your best, to acknowledge each breath with a smile, slowly and surely, your tickety-tackety relationship with yourself, you'll begin to develop a deeper, more intimate awareness of what's really going on here in your heart.
Mm.
And you will begin to discover answers, possibilities that perhaps you've been searching for out there in the world, in a book. But the answers truly lie inside you. Every book has information, stories. But until you take ownership for who you are within that story, you'll never discover more about who you are. You will be listening. When you read a book, you're listening to someone else's story.
It's true.
And it's not that there isn't something to learn or to consider, but the answers aren't in the book. The answers are within yourself
Indeed.
as you explore the information or the stories within a book.
Right here.
And sometime maybe we'll talk about this. I'll get myself probably in trouble, but I am who I am, worthy to be who I
Yes,
am,
to be who you are.
is every self-help book. Everyone seems to really be into these self-help books. Everyone's looking for something to help them. I'm telling you, right? Like, think of it. But what do all these activities do? Well, they require you to take time. The activity or the self-help book that interests you, and if you connect with it, usually acknowledges you for who you are. Like you connect with this story, this other person talking about, and you feel like that's about me. So in other words, that book on some level is acknowledging you for who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Then they do all the work for you, walking you through supposedly all the things that are happening inside of you or have happened to you, and then give you suggestions of what you should do, how to fix it. A self-help book.
Yes.
But I'm telling you, you have the tools already. You just have to make a mindful choice to take time to acknowledge with each breath who you are. And then to take ownership for the conversations that you're having and ask questions. Stop making assumptions, start asking questions. What do I believe that results in this conversation, in this response or reaction? Change, awakening, grace. Kindness comes by taking ownership for who you are. And that's what the amazing thing is I say this, the practice monster accepts everyone for who they are. A baby born accepts everyone itself and everyone around it as they are. In other words, a baby has no expectations, assumptions. It has no beliefs. You with me?
That's true.
And I'm sharing with you that all these beliefs, I'm going to tell you, within our society have become mindless beliefs. And we are talking sharing mindlessly because we have not made a mindful choice about what we believe. So I'm encouraging people, the world will be what it will be, but each of us has the power, the ability to take ownership for who we are. And the step number one is to decide, to make a mindful choice what I believe, and then have the courage to mindfully practice. So today, the policy that I put forward is stop making assumptions, start asking questions, and then to have the courage to mindfully choose to breathe in the smile of acknowledgement. I am who I am worthy to be who I am. Believe, dream, believe in the dream. You are the dream, Douglas. You are the dream of possibilities. Believe it, dream it, be it, live it, practice it. Practice it. Never stop dreaming, never stop believing in who you are. I say, believe in who you are. And the answer to that is you are what you believe. So everyone, get a book out, a notebook out. Start writing down, what do you believe? And I'm not going to put you on the spot, Douglas, but you can ask me, but you know what I believe.
Yes.
What is that, Douglas?
If
I may ask that question.
Of course. You believe that I am worthy to be who I am.
Right. And that's the only thing I believe. So everything I experience is filtered through that belief.
It's touching. That's a very beautiful belief, and if only this thought, if this was someone's only takeaway from this, which I hope that it would be more, but even if it was just that, to understand another person's perspective from the simple viewpoint of that person is worthy to be who they are. It is not their circumstance. It is not their financial state. It is not their mental state. It is not their physical state. You know, just like with the practice monster. I, instead of asking a question right away, made that assumption. And innocent as it might seem through that lens, if even a child were to take that, it's very difficult for you to then accept who the practice monster really is.
Right.
And it is more difficult for us to accept who we are if we cannot accept each other for who we are. And right. Stop making assumptions based off of things that we see or things that we hear or things that someone has said or a certain circumstance. Right. But instead, just in the moment, acknowledge that person, that individual, whoever they might be, for who they are.
And so it becomes simple. The only story you are responsible for and should be speaking to and about is
yours.
Thus, I won't be making assumptions about anyone else because I'll only be speaking about my story. And I guess I'll share this story, two stories. And then probably we should wish everyone a wonderful evening or day, or I should say a wonderful experience of breath by breath.
Breath by
And the two things are this, and this is a couple of years ago, and it was weird. It was an unusual experience. I guess the stars aligned and brought to my table two grandmothers within a week, both sharing with me how they were struggling with a grandchild who was identifying transgender. And that was really tough. And I'm not going to get into the details, but my message to the grandmothers, both of them, was you don't have to understand to offer your grandchild grace. In other words, the most wonderful thing and the most valuable thing you can offer your grandchild at this time and at all times is that they know that you accept them as they are. If you're waiting to understand that journey within that child who's identifying and struggling with that conversation, you'll never get there because that's your grandchild's story. All they need from me, from you as a grandma, is you love them to death and accept them no matter how they move forward. And it's two things. It's the grandchild's story, not grandma's story.
Mm.
And that's the same thing again, what we just talked about. So I left that being. So if you're waiting to understand, to be able to accept someone or offer grace, never going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, the other story was, of course, with our, it sort of had to do with immigration conversations that go on the world in person, said something that was very derogatory, like politically definitely inappropriate.
Right.
And a friend who felt very uncomfortable because they are very inclusive and very open and full of grace and compassion as a human being. And when this person spoke, the details don't matter again, the challenge was that this person said these inappropriate or uncomfortable words, which my friend disagreed with. Was just totally inappropriate and was not his story, and
Yeah.
had the urge to address it, but didn't know how. He wasn't sure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And as we talked it through, and then he wanted to come back and maybe talk to the person again, come back to where this happened, and share that I do disagree with you, and felt bad because he hadn't spoken his truth. And so then they said that here it is again, how we say things. Do we speak about someone else's story or do we speak about our story? So we don't have to create conflict to speak our truth. And here it is. So if I say to you, if I disagree with you, Douglas, to go, well, I disagree with you, Douglas, and this is what I feel. Or I can respond by saying, well, in my personal experience for my journey, I totally love different cultures, and I have been so richly blessed and enriched, and my whole life has grown. And I don't even have to tell you that I think what you just said is wrong. It's inappropriate. I can change the conversation because once I say to you, you're wrong, or I disagree with you, you stop
Listening.
and you go on to I'm going to defend myself. You're not right. So nothing's being heard.
And you
But if
want
I
to do the
go,
inverse. Yeah.
so I don't even, I do my best as I develop my skills of how to speak my truth, is we so often in our discourse feel we have to tell the other party or the other group that they're wrong, and I have to prove that I'm going to prove to them that I'm right. And you see this on social media. Then the people that are trying to prove it right are not pleased because they don't get it, why these other people don't seem to get it. And then they don't see, right? Because no one is listening. Both people are in positions of defense and attacking.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you, find a kinder way. And it's simple as this. You can say anything to me, but so can I. But I'm not going to even get into your noise, right? That noise, whatever it was, and just say, well, I can say thank you for being you. But I'm going to share with you that my personal experience has been very enriching, hanging with friends from all over the world with different cultures and different ways of expressing themselves. So I am so grateful to have had those experiences. But I got to get going now. But my point is, I don't have to confront and prove someone's wrong or even say I disagree. I just share my joy for who I am and for my experience. And I'm going to tell you that person will hear that. But if I preface it that I disagree with you, nothing will be heard. So there you go. Another possibility of finding a kinder way and a healthy way. The only story you're responsible for and you should speak about
is your own.
You got it, my friend. And as always, Douglas, thank you for being you. Never forget that you are awesome, that you are who you are, worthy to be who you are. As we both breathe in and smile, the smile of possibilities, the smile of acknowledgement. Thank you all for being you.
Thank you all so much. And we'll hopefully see you again on the next one. Take care, Mr. Paul.